tax cuts, saying lawmakers should wait and see how the balanced budget amendment fares on Capitol Hill and what effect that amendment would have on state finances. Today's House session was to be a split session, but quick work by support staff and delegates allowed all proposed bills to be introduced in rapid fashion. Don Gratial has that story and other news from the House of Delegates.
With only 15 days remaining in the regular session, the final day to introduce bills into the House flew by in just under 2 hours. Of that time, nearly 75% went to debate over tax cuts, as proposed by the combined representatives of Kanawha County, commonly known as the Four Horsemen of the 32nd District. Delegate Dick Henderson took the floor in an obviously rehearsed maneuver to gain the attention of the membership.
Now, as a sign of our pledge to cut taxes, or cut our ties to high taxes, I will say, I will ask my friends from the 32nd District to please stand. Okay. The time to cut our ties to high taxes is now, this year. There is no good reason to wait, so let us cut.
Could you aim those scissors a little higher?
Will the pages please come up to our desk and take these to the Honorable Finance Chair as a reminder that now is the time to cut taxes, not next year.
Mr. Speaker, I've only received 2 of the ties so far, but a couple comments to make. The first would be, unanimous consent to address the House. The first would be that I think one of the gentlemen, I'm not sure which, needs a bib. And the second is that I'm going to put these ties to good use immediately. I'm going to give them to our Sergeant at Arms. I'm sure he'll be able to use them. And in return for giving these to our Sergeant at Arms, I would also ask that he come forward and remove the 4 gentlemen from the 32nd for not being properly attired.
While the lighthearted demonstration drew its share of raised eyebrows and chuckles, it turned somber and serious with a quick turn.
But I take offense. I'm not going to apologize for it. Have a finance chairman, a judiciary chairman, an education chairman, government orgs, on down the line, a majority leader, a speaker, who have earnestly worked on both sides. No games, no gimmicks. They have laid things out in an honest way. And I think it's grossly unfair to continue to bash on those people.
It's not our intention to take pot shots, and I don't doubt the hard work of every member in this House. But the fact is, we who are pushing these tax cuts so hard believe that these tax cuts are essential for West Virginia. Now, members may differ on that, but I think the tax cuts are needed. Yes, there are changes going on in Washington. We can never predict, no matter who's in charge in Washington, what's going to be done in Washington.
Again, I have nothing wrong with the humor, sir, but I hope, do you understand my concern that when this is portrayed, it has a negative impact on various people who have worked very hard, and I think in a very cooperative manner. And do you understand my concern?
I understand your concern, and I think sometimes people in this House maybe take things a little too personally when it's a disagreement over philosophy rather than attacking an individual's efforts. I mean, there are sincere disagreements in this House over how we should proceed. I mean, I believe every member in this House wants to improve West Virginia.
As tempers and issues cooled, Finance Chairman Bob Kiss explained that he sees the potential for tax relief next year, not now.
We're trying to not spend money this year so that next year we can come back, and if we don't get a shellacking from the federal government, that money's there for a tax cut. And it's permanently there into the future for a tax cut. Not a one-time cut, but potentially even the flexibility for a permanent reduction. So I think there's a plan there, and I think anyone that insinuates otherwise is just not being fair. The infrastructure, the workers' comp, this tax reduction proposal has been presented and formulated in large part by the House leadership of the last several years, Republicans and Democrats. And I don't want to get involved in partisan bickering over the next 2 weeks. But I am certainly more than willing to do that if I feel like we start to denigrate or slide down that slope.
As the session got back on track, the two bills on third reading were passed, both committee substitutes. House Bill 2205, as Judiciary Chair Rick Staten reveals.
What it deals with is the entitlement of a person who escapes from the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections to either parole or what's known as a good time deduction. A good time deduction is a reduction on off the back end of a person's sentence if that person, while incarcerated, maintains certain levels of trust within the Department of Corrections. What this bill does is provides that if a person escapes from the custody of the department, then that person is not entitled to that good time deduction, nor is that person entitled to parole.
Also passing House Bill 2050. It's explained by Vice Chair of Education, Bill Proudfoot.
House Bill 2050 exempts private and religious schools that serve specifically special education students from standardized testing. Presently, if students do not come up with a 40 percentile, they're referred back to the public education system. This bill will provide alternate testing systems for those children, and that will be set up with the agreement of the superintendent, the school, and their parents.
There were 14 bills on amendment stage, all advanced. 5 bills on first read also moved forward. House of Delegates action today started on a light note with the tie-cutting ceremony, if you will, but it turned into a very serious discussion on the tax reduction proposals that are out. You, of course, just saw what happened there. As this was the last day to introduce bills into the House, there were 60 bills awaiting the delegation this morning when they came in and sat down, and another 62 bills were introduced halfway through the session. So 122 bills introduced on this day, the final day to introduce bills. 822 bills total introduced into the House during this particular session. But that's it. Next week they can act on these bills, and then following that they can start working on bills that came over from the Senate. From the House of Delegates, this is Don Gratian.
Well, there was good news in the Senate today in relation to the disposal of waste tires.
Was underway, committee reports dominated the early agenda.